My sister slept with my boyfriend, got pregnant, and now my parents want my inheritance, but they didn't see what was coming next. I'm 24 now, but this whole nightmare kicked off a couple of years ago. Back then, I was dating this guy I met in college. Let's call him Ethan. Things between us took off pretty quickly. He came off as kind, thoughtful, and we had a lot in common. In the beginning, it felt like everything was falling into place. I fell hard for him. I really believed he might be the one. So after about a year of being together, I figured it was time to take the next step. Introduce him to my family. That might not sound like a big deal to most people, but in my family, it's a whole event. We come from a pretty conservative background, strong cultural traditions, firm expectations about relationships, dating, and definitely marriage. So when my parents met Ethan, let's just say it didn't go great. They weren't openly rude, but their faces said it all. I got the look, the silent judgment, like, are you sure about this guy? Still, I hoped they'd warm up to him. I figured they just needed time, but interestingly enough, while my parents were giving off lukewarm vibes, my sisters were completely charmed. Lily, my 22-year-old sister, and Chloe, who's only 11, both got along with him really well. That made me feel good. Family approval mattered to me. Even if it was just from my sisters, Lily in particular seemed to really enjoy his company. We even joked around, saying she was trying to steal my boyfriend. If only I'd known. Chloe absolutely adored him too, but she was just a kid, so it felt innocent, sweet even. Ethan and I weren't living together. We come from a culture where cohabiting before marriage is a major no-no, so we lived in different cities and saw each other whenever we could. As far as I knew, things between us were solid. I trusted him completely. He was my boyfriend, and I thought he clicked well with the people closest to me. What could possibly go wrong, right? Well, about 3 months after I brought him home to meet my family, the cracks started to show. I was spending the weekend at his place. It was a pretty normal day. We grabbed some takeout, watched a movie, nothing out of the ordinary. Later that night, he went to take a shower, and that's when his phone buzzed. Now, I've never been the snooping type. I've always believed that if you have to go digging through someone's phone, you're already in trouble, but something about that moment felt off. I can't explain it. His phone kept lighting up, and before I could even think it through, I picked it up. Maybe some part of me already knew, or maybe it was just curiosity. Either way, I unlocked it, and the first thing I saw, a message from Lily. At first, I didn't think much of it. She's my sister. Why would I? But when I opened the chat, my stomach dropped. These weren't just normal sibling-in-law kind of texts. They were flirty, like hookup level flirty. I scrolled up, and the deeper I went, the worse it got. There were months, literal months, of these messages, late-night chats, inside jokes I didn't recognize, plans to meet up when I wasn't around. I felt physically ill, my boyfriend, my sister. How long had this been going on behind my back? My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to take screenshots of everything. I needed proof. I didn't think. I just acted, sent the messages to myself, grabbed my stuff, and left. No confrontation, no dramatic scene. He was still in the shower. I didn't give him the chance to lie to my face or spin some kind of story. As soon as I got home, my phone started blowing up, calls, texts. Ethan obviously realized I'd found out, but I couldn't even look at the screen without feeling rage and heartbreak boil over. Eventually, I dumped the screenshots into our group chat. Our mutual friends needed to see the truth. Then I blocked him. All of it, I was done. But here's the thing. Ethan's betrayal was brutal. No question. Still, the knife that cut the deepest? That was Lily. She wasn't just my sister. We were practically glued at the hip growing up. Our parents were always kind of distant, caught up in their own world, so Lily and I leaned on each other a lot. We were only 2 years apart and had always been close, or so I thought. The next morning, I couldn't sit with it anymore. I packed a bag and flew straight home. I wasn't there for closure. I was there for confrontation. When I walked through the door, Lily was just sitting there at the kitchen table like nothing had happened, scrolling through her phone. No guilt, no shame. I slammed the printed screenshots down in front of her. Our parents were in the room too. Lily glanced at the messages, shrugged, and said, "Yeah, I did it, so what?" I could have screamed. She acted like none of it mattered, like she hadn't just torched our relationship beyond repair, that kind of cold indifference. I didn't even recognize her anymore. Then came something I never expected. My mom slapped her, open hand, across the face. I had never seen my mother do that before. My dad lost it too, yelling, demanding Lily leave the house. He gave her a week to pack up and move out. For a second, I thought that was it. I thought the worst had already happened, but of course, the universe wasn't done yet. 2 days later, Lily dropped another bomb. She was pregnant, and the father? Ethan? I didn't even have the energy to react. I felt like I was watching someone else's life unravel. It was surreal. And then the twist I really didn't expect. My parents, who had been furious just days earlier, completely flipped. The minute they found out about the baby, everything changed. Suddenly, Lily was no longer the traitor. They couldn't abandon her. She was carrying a child now, and that, apparently, absolved everything. It was like they'd rewritten the whole narrative. I couldn't stay quiet. I told them exactly what I thought, that they were enabling her, that this whole thing was toxic and wrong. They told me to calm down, to stop being dramatic, but I'd had enough. I packed my things again and walked out, told them not to contact me, blocked them all, except Chloe. She's still a kid, and none of this was her fault. I couldn't cut her off completely. 2 weeks after cutting ties, I get this random text from a number I don't recognize. It's my mom. Somehow, she'd gotten a new number just to send me a wedding invitation. Ethan and Lily were getting married, and she actually had the nerve to talk about family unity, like I should just smile and show up. I didn't even respond. I just blocked her again. That was the moment I realized. This whole mess? It was only the beginning. After everything, Lily, Ethan, the lies, the betrayal, I really believed that walking away would bring me peace. I thought, finally, I can breathe. But life? It had other ideas. I wasn't talking to anyone in the family except Chloe. She was the only one I stayed in touch with, and I was doing my best to just keep my head down and move forward. But of course, when you come from a family like mine, peace is always temporary. About 2 months later, I started hearing things, mostly through my cousin, the one person I still kind of trusted from that side of the family. She mentioned that Lily was having a baby shower and that my parents were hosting it. Apparently, they were going all out, invitations sent, decorations planned, like it was some kind of royal event. I wasn't even surprised at first. I figured they'd try to rewrite history, paint Lily as some innocent little dove. But then my cousin dropped a bomb I wasn't prepared for. She told me my parents were telling people I was the one who had turned my back on the family, that I abandoned them, and that Lily? She was the good daughter, the one holding everything together. I couldn't believe it after everything she did. She was the hero now. I was so mad I could barely breathe. I wanted to call my mom, scream at her, make her face what she'd done, but I didn't. I knew better than to get sucked back into that chaos. So I stayed quiet on the outside. At least inside, I was burning. They weren't just twisting the truth, they were completely rewriting it, and I wasn't even there to defend myself. A few days later, I got a message from Chloe. She was just checking in, giving me little updates the way she always did, but then she mentioned something that really hit me sideways. Apparently, my mom had been telling people I needed to hurry up and get married. Not because she cared about me or my happiness, of course, no. She didn't want the neighbors gossiping about how Lily, the younger sister, was already married and having a baby before me. Can you imagine? I hadn't spoken to them in months, and somehow I was still being dragged into the drama. My mom was out there trying to manage my reputation like I was just another item on her checklist of appearances. That's how she's always been, more worried about how things look than how they really are. Lily's betrayal didn't matter. Ethan's lies didn't matter. The real scandal, in her eyes, was that I wasn't playing along with the perfect family script. And yeah, it made me angry, but more than that, it made me sad. Like, what would it take for them to actually see me? To care about my pain instead of hiding it under some fake version of reality? Eventually, Lily's wedding happened. I didn't go, obviously, but my cousin filled me in later. Apparently, it was a full-blown spectacle. Lavish venue, designer dress, expensive catering. The works. Lily was only a few months pregnant, but they tried to spin it all like it was a totally normal, respectable situation. We're just being responsible, they told people, making sure the baby is born into a proper home. Yeah, right. My cousin also told me that my parents had told everyone I didn't show up because I was too busy with work, not because, my sister slept with my boyfriend. Nope, just me being career-focused. But what really got me wasn't just the lies, it was that they were still pretending everything was perfect, like their family wasn't cracked right down the middle, like I had just vanished. They weren't just covering up the truth, they were erasing me completely. So I did what I'd been doing. I kept my distance, focused on work, threw myself into rebuilding a life that had been ripped apart. For a while, it worked. Things were quiet, too quiet, honestly, and just when I started to believe maybe they'd finally left me alone, I got a call. It was late. I was just about to head to bed when my phone rang, and something about that moment, I just knew something was wrong. It was Chloe. She was crying so hard I could barely make out what she was saying at first, but eventually, I understood. Our dad had passed away. I froze. I didn't know what to feel. We weren't exactly close, but still, he was my dad. But what really broke me? It wasn't that he was gone, it was that Chloe had to be the one to tell me, not my mom, not Lily. Chloe, barely a teenager, had to be the one to deliver that news. And it got worse. Apparently, my dad had been sick for a while, months, and no one told me. My mom actually told Chloe she didn't want to stress me out, like I wasn't even part of the family anymore, like I didn't have the right to know. The next morning, I booked a flight home. I didn't care about the drama anymore. I just wanted to be there for Chloe. But when I walked through the front door of my childhood home, it felt like walking into enemy territory. Lily and my mom were already there, and the moment they saw me, it was like they'd been waiting. They didn't say hello, they didn't offer condolences, they accused me, said I was only there for the inheritance. Lily, in particular, went off, called me selfish, claimed I abandoned them during the hardest time. I didn't even get a chance to mourn. There was no room for grief. Everything was about money. And then the will was read. Turns out, my dad had left me the largest share of his estate. I was completely stunned. I hadn't expected anything from my dad, especially after how things had gone down between us. But there it was in black and white. The will, I got 40%, Chloe got 30%, my mom 20%, and Lily, she got 10%. You'd think I'd feel some kind of relief, like finally, some justice for all the years of manipulation, deceit, and betrayal, but honestly, it just made everything worse. Lily and her husband lost it. They flipped. Started demanding that I give up my share, saying I didn't deserve it. Lily needed the money more because of her kid, they said. They even threatened to take me to court. Now, I knew they didn't have a leg to stand on, but the fact they were willing to go this far? It showed just how greedy and self-serving they'd become. It was never about family or what was right. It was about getting their hands on whatever they could. I told them straight up, I'm not giving up anything. That's when things got ugly. Lily's husband started making threats. Nothing that could hold up in court, but still unsettling. He told me I'd regret it if I didn't just walk away. At that moment, I realized I wasn't just grieving the loss of my dad anymore. I was now fighting for my sanity, too. This was too much. After the will reading, I retreated to my hotel to clear my head. I tried to process everything. My dad, the inheritance mess, the betrayal, the greed. And then it hit me. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I'd spent so long letting my family control the narrative, letting them dictate the terms of my life. But not anymore. This time, I was standing up for myself. Update 1. After the whole inheritance disaster, I figured things couldn't get any worse. They'd accused me of showing up just for the money, and Lily and her husband were trying to bully me into giving up my share, but there was no way in hell I was backing down. I had every right to what my dad had left me, and after everything, there was no chance I was going to give in to their demands. A couple of days later, I got a call from my lawyer. We had another meeting scheduled to go over more details about the estate. Honestly, I just wanted it all to be over so I could go back to my life. But when I arrived at his office, the last thing I expected was the next bombshell. My dad had written me a letter before he passed away. The lawyer handed me the envelope and told me that my dad had specifically asked him to give it to me when the time was right. I just sat there for a minute, staring at the letter. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to open it. I had so many mixed feelings about him. Yeah, he left me the largest share of the inheritance, but he was also silent when I needed him most. He never stood up for me during the mess with Lily. I was angry, but also I missed him. I can't even explain it. I finally opened the letter. It wasn't long, just a few short paragraphs, and what he said hit me harder than I expected. He apologized. He said he knew he should have done more for me, but he'd felt trapped by the situation with my mom and Lily. He admitted he had regrets, especially about how everything ended between us. Reading that, honestly, I didn't know whether to cry or scream. Part of me felt a little bit of closure, but a bigger part of me was pissed that he didn't say any of this while he was alive. If he had, maybe things could have been different. But it was too late for that now. There was nothing I could do to change the past. After I read the letter, we went over a few more details about the estate, but my mind wasn't on that anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about how different things might have been if my dad had just spoken up sooner, if he had stood up for me when I needed it the most. On my way back to the hotel, I got a call from Chloe. She was upset, telling me that Lily had been going around town, saying some pretty horrible things about me. Lily was telling people that I was trying to steal the inheritance from the family, that I was turning everyone against her. I wasn't surprised. Lily always knew how to play the victim. She could twist any situation to make herself look innocent, but hearing it, again, still stung. When I got back to the hotel, I decided I needed a break from the drama. I picked up Chloe and we went out for dinner. We talked about everything, what had happened, how we were both handling it, how much we hated that she was stuck in the middle of all this. I tried to reassure her that none of this was her fault. She didn't ask for any of this. She just got caught in the crossfire, and I hated it. But the very next morning, it took another turn for the worse. I woke up to a bunch of missed calls and texts from unknown numbers. At first, I thought it was just spam, but then I started reading the messages. They were all threatening, calling me names, accusing me of tearing the family apart. Someone even threatened to make me pay if I didn't back down. I had no idea who was behind it, but I had a pretty strong suspicion it was Lily's husband. He'd already threatened me once before. I wouldn't put it past him to try something like this. I forwarded the messages to my lawyer just in case things escalated, but honestly, it was starting to get scary. I didn't know what they were capable of, but I had a sinking feeling it wouldn't end here. It's one thing to deal with family drama, but when people start making threats, it's a whole other level. Later that afternoon, I walked to my car, ready to get some air and clear my head, only to find that someone had slashed all 4 of my tires. I stood there, frozen. It was like the world had just stopped. I was completely freaked out. I mean, who does that? I knew Lily and her husband were angry. But this felt like they were willing to go to any lengths to get what they wanted. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about making me suffer. I called the police immediately, filed a report, but deep down, I didn't have much hope they'd actually catch whoever did it. I knew it was Lily or her husband. They were the only ones with a reason to do something so extreme, but I wasn't about to let them intimidate me, no way. I didn't want to be scared to step outside. I was already dealing with enough emotional weight as it was, and I wasn't going to let them add fear to that list. I talked to the hotel staff, and they beefed up security around the property, which gave me a little peace of mind, but I knew this was far from over. A few days later, we had another meeting with the lawyer to go over the final details of the estate. Lily and her husband were there, and the tension in that room was suffocating. They barely said a word to me, but the glares they shot my way said everything. The anger was palpable. At the end of the meeting, Lily's husband pulled me aside. His voice was low, threatening. He told me I was making a huge mistake by not giving up my share of the inheritance, that I'd regret it, that it wasn't over. I didn't even bother responding. I just turned and walked away. I wasn't going to let him intimidate me into backing down, but deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. Lily and her husband weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted, and I needed to be prepared for whatever was coming next. That night, I sat down and thought about everything that had happened since my dad passed. The lies, the threats, the vandalism. It was exhausting. It felt like every time I took a step forward, they pulled me 2 steps back. I wanted it to end. I wanted to move on with my life and leave all this behind, but I knew I couldn't. At least not until Lily and her husband were out of the picture. But no matter how hard they tried to break me, I wasn't going to give up. I had been through too much to let them push me around now. They could threaten me all they wanted, but I wasn't backing down. This was my life, my inheritance, and I was going to fight for it. And if they thought they could scare me into submission, they were in for a rude awakening. Update 2. Things didn't calm down after that last meeting with the lawyer. If anything, they got worse. Lily and her husband were getting more and more desperate. Honestly, it was starting to feel like I was living in some bad movie. The threats kept coming, the nasty texts from random numbers didn't stop, and I was completely mentally drained. One night, about a week after the tire slashing incident, I was heading back to the hotel after dinner with Chloe. She had been staying with me for a few days, which was honestly a relief. It was nice to have someone on my side through all of this. As we walked through the lobby, I noticed a guy standing by the entrance. He was watching us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. At first, I figured he was just some random guy waiting for someone, but then when we passed him, he followed us. I tried to stay calm, but my heart was racing. The whole situation had me on edge. We got into the elevator, and as soon as the doors closed, I turned to Chloe. "Did you see that guy?" I asked. She nodded, her face pale. "Yeah, he was staring at us." I immediately called the front desk and reported it. They said they'd check the cameras and send someone up to patrol the floor, but even that didn't calm me. The whole thing felt like too much. It felt like they were getting closer. I couldn't shake the feeling that Lily's husband was behind this somehow. Who else would go to these lengths just to scare me? The paranoia was eating at me. That night, I barely slept. Every noise, every creak in the building had me jumping out of bed, convinced someone was trying to break in. It was like living in a constant state of fear, and all I could think about was how to make it stop. The next morning, I decided I had to take action. I called my lawyer, told him everything about the threats, the guy in the lobby, the slashed tires. He agreed things were getting out of control and suggested we get a restraining order against Lily's husband. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but at that point it felt like the only option. I wasn't going to let them intimidate me any longer. We filed the paperwork the next day. While we waited for the court date, Lily and her husband didn't take it well. The texts ramped up again. More threats, more accusations about how I was ruining everything. It was exhausting. But I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't backing down. They could throw whatever they wanted at me, but I was done being afraid. A few days later, the court date arrived. I showed up with my lawyer, and of course, Lily and her husband were there. They looked smug, like they thought this whole thing was a joke. I avoided eye contact, focusing on what my lawyer was saying, but I could feel their eyes boring into me, judging me. When the judge called us up, Lily's husband tried to turn the tables, claiming I was the one causing all the drama. He said I was exaggerating everything, that I was just bitter about the inheritance and trying to make his life hell. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He slashed my tires, sent me threats, and somehow I was the problem? But the judge wasn't having it. After hearing both sides, they granted the restraining order. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a small sense of relief. At least now there was something in place to protect me if things got worse, but of course, things didn't magically get better overnight. The threats didn't stop immediately, and I still felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder, but at least now I had the law on my side, and that gave me some peace of mind. A few weeks passed, and I was finally starting to feel like maybe things were settling down. I was still staying in the hotel, but I had started looking for a new apartment where I could feel safer. Chloe had gone back home, and I missed her. We kept in touch constantly. She was still dealing with the fallout from all the family drama, but at least she wasn't stuck in the middle of it as much as I was. Then, one morning, I woke up to a message from an unknown number. It wasn't a threat this time, though it was a link. I hesitated for a second before clicking on it, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Someone had created an entire website dedicated to trashing me. I couldn't believe my eyes. Lies, half-truths, and just pure nastiness. They were painting me as a selfish, greedy person who was tearing the family apart. There were even photos of me from the funeral, looking cold and heartless, according to the captions. This was next-level crazy. I immediately called my lawyer and sent him the link. He told me to screenshot everything, which I did. Then we started the process of getting the website taken down. It was just another reminder that Lily and her husband weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted, but at this point I was so tired. I didn't even care what they threw at me anymore. I just wanted it to be over. That night, I talked to Chloe again. She was upset about the website and wanted to help, but there wasn't much she could do. I didn't want her getting caught up in all of this any more than she already was. We talked for a while, and she told me how Lily had been acting like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't caused any of this. Typical Lily. Always playing the victim. I went to bed that night feeling drained, but at least I had a plan in place. The website would get taken down, the restraining order was in effect, and I had people on my side. I wasn't alone in this, even though it felt like it sometimes. The next day, I woke up to an email from my lawyer saying the website had been taken down. Finally, some good news. It felt like a small victory in this endless battle, but I'd take what I could get. I knew Lily and her husband weren't going to give up easily, but at least now I had some control over the situation. As I sat in my hotel room that morning, sipping my coffee and trying to wrap my head around everything that had happened, I realized something. I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry, yes, but the fear that had been hanging over me for weeks had started to fade. I wasn't going to let them control my life anymore. They could try all they wanted to drag me down, but I wasn't backing down, not now, not ever. Update 3. Here we are at the final stretch, and I thought maybe things were going to finally settle down after the court win. But nope, my family drama had other plans. I mean, I knew Lily and her husband weren't going to back off that easily, but even I couldn't have guessed how far they'd take it this time. It started about 2 weeks after the court hearing. I was starting to feel a little more relaxed, like I could finally breathe again without constantly looking over my shoulder. I was even thinking about moving out of the hotel and into an apartment, something more permanent. But then something weird happened. One morning, I got a package delivered to my hotel. It didn't have a return address, which should have been my first clue that something was off. I opened it up, and inside was this old, beat-up notebook. At first, I thought it was just junk. Maybe some random person sent the wrong package or something, but then I opened it up, and that's when things got really creepy. The entire notebook was filled with handwritten notes about me. I mean, pages and pages of scribbled messages. All about my life, my family, and even things about my dad's will. Some of the notes were dates and times of where I'd been, who I'd been with, even places I'd gone with Chloe. Someone had been keeping tabs on me, and it was all laid out right there in front of me. A chill went down my spine. Who would send me this? Was it some sort of twisted intimidation tactic from Lily's husband? I mean, they'd already tried the threats, the vandalism, even the weird phone calls, but this was different. This felt way more personal. It felt like someone was watching me, tracking my every move. I called my lawyer immediately and sent him photos of the notebook. He was just as freaked out as I was and told me to report it to the police, which I did. They took the notebook as evidence, but I wasn't holding my breath for anything to come of it. This was the last straw for me. I had been fighting for so long, but now it felt like I was stuck in some twisted game I couldn't escape, and I wasn't sure who was playing the game anymore, but what I did know was that I wasn't going to let them control me. I couldn't, not anymore. They might have been trying to break me, but if they thought they were going to win, they had another thing coming. The police had their hands full with a million other things, and honestly, I didn't think they'd figure out who was behind this anytime soon. After that, I tried to keep a low profile, staying in my hotel room most of the time, and only going out when I absolutely had to. Chloe was still calling me regularly, and she was worried too. She had no idea who could have sent the notebook either, but she suspected Lily's husband, just like I did. Then one evening, as I was heading back to my room after grabbing some food, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. That same guy from the hotel lobby weeks ago, the one who had been watching Chloe and me, was back. He was standing near the elevators, pretending to scroll through his phone, but he was definitely keeping an eye on me. I felt my heart start to race, but I played it cool. I walked right past him, pretending like I didn't notice anything, but I could feel his eyes on me the whole time. Once I got into my room, I locked the door and immediately called hotel security. They said they'd check the cameras and send someone up to do a sweep of the floor, but honestly, I didn't feel safe there anymore. I called Chloe that night and told her everything. She was scared, which made me even more anxious. I hated that she was caught up in all this, that she had to deal with the fallout of Lily's mess, but I promised her I'd be careful. We made a plan to meet up the next day so we could figure out what to do next. The following day, I met Chloe at a cafe downtown, away from the hotel. We sat there for a couple of hours, talking about everything. She told me more about what had been going on with Lily at home, how she was acting like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just tried to take me to court over the will. It was infuriating, but it didn't surprise me. Then Chloe dropped something on me that I wasn't ready for. She said Lily's husband had been asking around about my whereabouts, trying to figure out where I was staying. That's when it hit me. The guy at the hotel, the notebook, all of it, they were keeping tabs on me, and they were probably planning something worse. I knew I couldn't stay at the hotel anymore. It wasn't safe, and if Lily's husband had people watching me, it was only a matter of time before things escalated. So that night, I packed up my things and checked out of the hotel. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even Chloe, just in case. I booked a room at a different hotel on the other side of town, hoping that would throw them off for a while. The next couple of days were quiet. I didn't hear anything from Lily or her husband, and the weird texts and calls seemed to have stopped, but I wasn't letting my guard down. I knew better than that by now. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my lawyer. He had some news that caught me completely off guard. Lily's husband had been arrested. Apparently, he'd been caught trying to break into my old hotel room. I didn't know what he was planning to do, but whatever it was, he got busted before he could follow through. I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that he was finally out of the picture, but anger that it had come to this. I mean, what kind of person goes that far just for some inheritance money? It was insane. The police told me they were investigating, and I'd probably have to go to court again to testify, but at least now I knew I was safe for the time being. After that, things finally started to calm down. The police kept me updated on the case, and my lawyer was confident that Lily's husband wouldn't be able to pull anything like this again, not with the charges he was facing. I moved into a new apartment a few weeks later, somewhere Lily and her husband didn't know about. I kept in touch with Chloe, of course, but I made sure she didn't tell anyone where I was living. I wasn't taking any chances. It's been a few months now, and while I'd like to say everything is back to normal, I don't think it ever will be. There's still a part of me that's always on edge, always looking over my shoulder, wondering if Lily or her husband will try something again. But for now, I'm just trying to move on with my life, to rebuild after everything they put me through. Looking back, I can't believe how far this all went. It started with Lily betraying me with my boyfriend, and somehow it escalated into threats, court battles, and restraining orders. But through it all, I've learned something important. I'm stronger than I ever thought I was, and no matter what, I'm never letting anyone take advantage of me again.